Hello and welcome to False Rape Timeline Hangout number 72, Liars Incorporated. I was going to do another live stream, another live hangout, but for two reasons I decided not to. One is that my perpetual cough has been particularly bad this week. I don't want to keep coughing and spluttering throughout. The other is that I've got some clips to show you. Yes, Liars Incorporated. This is about individuals, but most organisations, including registered charities, that lie gratuitously, not just for and on behalf of women who've committed heinous crimes, not just on women who claim to have been raped when they may or probably haven't been, or definitely haven't been in some cases, but it's far worse than that. In the United States in particular, there's the Innocence Project movement, what do you want to call it, the Innocence Project. There are different states have their own Innocence Projects, and you've got Amnesty International, which these organisations, I mean, there are miscarriages of justice. There are people in prison at this very moment who shouldn't be there, who've been committed of imaginary crimes or crimes other people committed. I know two personally, Michael Stone and another guy who I won't name. And Michael Stone was convicted of children murders, but also Marie Black, who's been portrayed by the UK media as a monster, and I genuinely believe her to be an abused woman. But the Innocence Movement and Amnesty International and organisations like Clive Stafford Smith's Reprieve, totally shameless, and they will lie. So I will start by showing you a video.
We turn now to a pending execution in Pennsylvania that's making national headlines. Terrence Williams, known as Terry, is scheduled to die on October 3rd. But advocates for child victims of sexual abuse are calling on Pennsylvania Governor Tom Corbett to grant him clemency. Terry Williams was convicted of two grisly murders in the 1980s. First, convicted of killing Herbert Hamilton, a 50-year-old man found naked with his throat cut by a knife. Williams was tried for third-degree murder in the case and sentenced to 27 years, a somewhat lenient charge because the murder reportedly happened after Hamilton had demanded he pose naked for him. Then in 1986, Williams was convicted of killing a second man, Amos Norwood, who was beaten with a tire iron, set on fire, and left in a cemetery. The murder happened just 3 months after Terry Williams turned 18 years old. What the jury in that case did not know is that Norwood had sexually abused Williams and had allegedly violently raped him the night before. Furthermore, Williams had suffered years of physical and sexual abuse by older men. Most recently, evidence has emerged that prosecutors tried to make robbery seem like the motive for the murder, even though Williams' co-defendant knew about the sexual abuse.
That was shameless liar Amy Goodman of Democracy Now! She was parroting the propaganda of Amnesty International, but she knew they were lies. If you can hear that peeping in the background, that's my fire alarm and smoke detectors. It beeps every few minutes. I have to have something. I see if I can get something done about it, but it's been going on for a while. Right. Yeah. You'll find Williams on the False Rape Timeline at where are we? January 2nd, 1984. As far as I know, this scumbag still hasn't been executed. There's a judgment on the timeline, but there's another one which I may add to it because it's more, how can I put it, it's more lyrical. And no, the first part of what she said was true. He was convicted of 2 utterly heinous murders. Now, I'm no fan of homosexuals, as some of you may know, and certainly not of bisexuals, men who have sex with other men, then go out and sleep with their unsuspecting wives. But these 2 blokes were, I mean, it's absolutely horrific. She says that the jury never heard he was being a victim of sexual abuse for a decade. The reason the jury never heard that is because it never happened. I'll read here from this is a judgment which isn't on the timeline yet. This is the opinion of the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. Terence Williams versus Geoffrey Beard, Commissioner, yada yada yada. And this is from 2010. Circuit Judge Smith. 25 years ago, petitioner Terence Williams was tried and convicted of first-degree murder for the killing of Amos Norwood. The jury then returned a sentence of death. After 2 decades of appeals, 2 decades, imagine that, in this Pennsylvania state courts, Williams filed a petition for federal habeas review pursuant to 20 U.S.C. number 2254. The district court denied the petition but certified 2 questions for our review. To it, whether trial counsel was constitutionally ineffective during the penalty phase of trial, and 2, whether the Commonwealth exercised its peremptory strike in a peremptory strikes in a racially discriminatory manner in violation of Magson, Kentucky. Yeah, these are Magson, Kentucky. These are 2. Almost every case goes to appeal. There's Strickland v. Washington, 1984, ineffective assistance of counsel. You'd be surprised how many useless lawyers there are in America. And they all seem to defend capital cases. Batson v. Kentucky is about striking black jurors from the jury. I mean, it's ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. I believe that one, if not both, of the victims were black. I've done a lot of research on it outside. I haven't found photographs of them, but I think I found a photograph of one of them. Well, I believe both victims were black, but that's neither here nor there. He goes on, we permitted Williams to expand the certificate of appealability to include a question regarding the constitutional propriety of the trial court's accomplice liability instructions. We conclude each issue is without merit and will affirm. And this is, I say this is lyrical, this is poetry. This is almost as good as the judgment handed down by Lord Justice Kennedy in the Zora Shah case. That's on the timeline too. The story of Terence Williams is reminiscent of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. As Dr. Jekyll, Williams was a local football star, the quarterback of the Germantown High School team that won the Philadelphia Public League Championship in 1982. He was presented with the Sportsman of the Year award by the Philadelphia Board of Sports Officials, and he was recruited by at least 8 different collegiate institutions. Nearly all of Williams' coaches and teachers, nearly all of Williams' coaches and teachers described him as mild-mannered, law-abiding and honest. In 1983, Williams graduated from Germantown High School and matriculated to Cheney State College in Philadelphia. In the estimation of one of his instructors, Williams was, quote, highly respected and admired by his teachers and all of his classmates, unquote. He was not only the star of the school's football team, but was also a classmate and student who showed respect for others and accepted his popularity with modesty. That's as good as it gets. But apparently Terence Williams had a sinister side. In the dead of night on Christmas Eve in 1982, a 16-year-old Williams broke into the Philadelphia residence of Don and Hilda Dorfman, aged 69 and 64 respectively. He entered Mrs. Dorfman's bedroom, waking her by pressing a .22 caliber Winchester rifle to her neck, and then pulled a bedsheet over her face. When Mrs. Dorfman attempted to remove the sheet, Williams ordered her to stop, quote, or her fucking head will be blown off, unquote. Williams then fired the rifle 3 times into the wall to show the victims he was serious. Williams and an accomplice ransacked the home before making off with cash, jewellery and the Dorfman automobiles. He was arrested for that. He pleaded mistaken identity. He was convicted and released on bail pending the trial. However, it got even worse. In January 1984, he embarked in earnest on a crime spree that would continue for the better part of 6 months. So he's been convicted and he's on bail all this time. Williams' next victim was a 51-year-old man named Herbert Hamilton, an individual from whom Williams had been receiving money in exchange for sex. This relationship, like much else in Williams' life, was kept hidden from most who knew him. Hamilton apparently threatened to publicise the secret, so Williams took action. On January 26, 1984, Williams called on Hamilton at his home. The two eventually retired to the bedroom and, as they proceeded towards the bed, Williams withdrew a concealed 10-inch butcher knife and attempted to stab Hamilton. Hamilton fought back, wrestled the knife from Williams and stabbed Williams in the chest. Hamilton then dropped the knife and ran into the kitchen to telephone for assistance. Meanwhile, Williams retrieved a nearby baseball bat, chased after Hamilton and beat him with the bat until Hamilton was bloody and severely wounded. Williams then recovered the butcher knife and stabbed Hamilton approximately 20 times, twice in the head, 10 times in the back, once in the neck, 4 times in the chest, and once each in the abdomen, arm and thumb. Finally, Williams drove the butcher knife through the back of Hamilton's neck until it protruded to the other side. He then doused Hamilton's body with kerosene and unsuccessfully attempted to set fire to it. When police officers later entered the apartment, they found Hamilton's kerosene-soaked body with a knife jammed through his neck. On the bathroom mirror, the phrase "I loved you" was scrawled in toothpaste. Williams was then 17. Doesn't sound much like a sexually abused kid to me. On June 11, 1984, Williams and a friend, Mark Draper, were gambling with several others on a street corner in the Westmount area neighbourhood of Philadelphia. It was not long before both young men lost all their money. While brainstorming potential means by which to recoup their losses, Williams said that he knew a man who lived nearby from whom they could extort cash. According to Williams, this individual, 56-year-old Amos Norwood, was a closeted homosexual. With a plan that they would threaten to reveal Norwood's secret to his wife, Draper and Williams set off to Norwood's apartment. When they arrived at Norwood's residence, Williams told Draper to wait outside. Williams emerged with $10 in cash approximately 20 minutes later. Williams and Draper were apparently satisfied with this amount because they returned to the street corner to resume gambling. A short time later, Norwood drove by the corner in his blue Chrysler LeBaron. When he spotted the vehicle, Williams said, "There goes my uncle," flagged down the car and entered via the passenger side door. Norwood then drove away. The blue LeBaron returned to the intersection several minutes later, whereupon Williams exited the vehicle, obviously having earned his $10. Exited the vehicle, approached Draper and said quietly, "Play it off like you're going home, like you want to ride home, and we're going to take some money." Draper understood Williams to be proposing a robbery. The two then got inside Norwood's automobile and Draper began to provide false directions to his home. In reality, Draper's directions led Norwood to a secluded area adjacent to the Ivy Hill Cemetery. Once there, Draper reached over the back seat, grabbed Norwood from behind and ordered him to be quiet and get out of the car. Norwood stopped the vehicle and complied. Williams and Draper then led Norwood into the cemetery and ordered him to lie face down near a tombstone. Then they murdered him. Draper appeared to have second thoughts, but he made the wrong decision. And Then they parted company. All very sad. I mean, it just really sickening. Afterwards, Williams returned alone and burned the body. And there's a lot more to this. He tried to implicate a totally innocent man in the murder. Williams wasn't homosexual. I don't think you could call him bisexual either. He was just prostituting himself. He had a kid who'll be 30 something now, nearly 40, and this is your sexually abused kid. Seriously, it's absolutely outrageous that they should peddle this sort of guff. Democracy Now!, Amnesty International. If there's, well, what mitigation does he have? His age when he committed these crimes. But I would have no problem seeing him executed. But I say he's still on death row. Which how many years after? Ludicrous. Here's another lie from Amy Goodman. This is Cyntoia Brown. Cyntoia Brown is on the False Rep timeline. I've also made a video about her.
At the age of 16, she was arrested for killing a man who'd picked her up for sex after she'd been forced into sexual slavery as a child. She was sentenced to life in prison after being convicted of first-degree murder for shooting her rapist. Today, Cyntoia Brown Long joins us to share her experience, what's happened in the 15 years since she was incarcerated, and how she won her release. In an incredible development, Cyntoia was granted clemency in January after former Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam commuted her sentence for murdering 43-year-old Johnny Allen, a state agent who took her to his home for sex in 2004. Cyntoia says Allen was behaving erratically and owned a number of guns, and that she feared for her life when she shot him in the head and made her escape. At the time, she was being sexually trafficked and repeatedly abused and drugged and forced into prostitution by a pimp nicknamed Cutthroat. She was just 16 years old at the time of the shooting, but she was tried as an adult and convicted of first-degree murder and aggravated robbery in 2006 without the possibility for parole until 2055.
You'll notice she threw in that bit about the robbery as an afterthought. What actually happened was, Johnny Allen was no rapist. Now, the age of consent in Tennessee is 18. She was 16 at the time, but when she was arrested, she told the police she was 19. So it's reasonable to assume she told Allen the same. When a legal team took her to court, they put her in pigtails, so she looked about 12. Here is the judgment, which is on the False Rep timeline. On the evening of August 7, 2004, police officers from the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department responded to a 911 call and found the body of the victim. Where are we here? The nude victim was lying face down on the bed in a large pool of blood with his hands beneath his face, his fingers kind of partially interlocked, like that. Actually, like that. It wasn't on the bed; he was in the bed. I won't reproduce it here, but you'll find the crime scene photographs on a Google search will show the crime scene photographs. In the UK, this wouldn't happen. Photographs like that would be locked up for 100 years, but you know, America's open justice. Well, it is open justice, but at the expense of distress to family and friends and victims. He was asleep. She shot him in the back of the head. So this guff about he was acting weird and he I mean, just absolutely nothing. I mean, I didn't actually. I mean, there's no evidence actually of sex. I mean, the available evidence suggests that Alan was a lonely man who was looking for company, female company, not necessarily sex. They had a TV dinner and everything, and she after murdering him, she robbed him. This claim that she was prostituted and drugged. No, I mean, she shot Alan with a gun she carried in her purse. How many sex trafficking victims carried guns in their purses? She was a wayward teen. She was living with this guy, Cutthroat. Sounds terrible, doesn't it? His real name was Gary McLaughlin. He was murdered sometime afterwards. She's basically it's all garbage. She was no rape victim. She was no trafficking victim. She was old enough to know what she was doing, and she was doing it voluntarily. And the gun she used to murder Johnny Allen was actually used in I think it was a robbery sometime before, in which a young woman was paralysed for life. It's on the timeline anyway. I mean, the point I'm making is that I'm not so much interested in Brown here as in the people who lie for her, people like her. Here it's Democracy Now! And I believe it was Kim Kardashian who started this nonsense. She's also campaigned for a serial rapist and murderer, Rodney Reed. Check out my video, Rodney Reed, Murderer and Serial Rapist, which you'll find on BitChute and the Internet Archive. No, this really is outrageous the way these perpetrators are transformed into victims. The Rape Crisis Network worldwide, I've covered that in, I wrote a long article about it, which you'll find on my main website, and also I think I've covered it online on Hangouts. In fact, I'm sure I have. But some rape crisis centres are worse than others. This alluring creature here is a dude in a dress, or should I say a dude in a sari. This is from the Open Democracy website. It's an article, How Anti-Trans Activists Forced Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre into Lockdown. There's been a bit of controversy actually over this Indian transsexual who is working at Rape Crisis Edinburgh, and real women aren't happy with it. But more seriously, Rape Crisis is a pernicious organisation. When, and this is on the timeline as well, Alex Salmon, when he was acquitted of attacks on attempted rape and similar on a number of women who had conspired to frame him, its chief executive Sandy Brinley referred to them as these brave women. No, they're not brave women, they're liars. Scottish Women's Aid is a similar pernicious organisation. I'm not sure if I've mentioned this case before, but it's on the timeline. This shows you the lengths to which they will go, these lowlife, in order to exonerate women or to help women literally get away with murder. On January 13th, 1999, this is on the timeline, Kim Galbraith murdered her husband. He was a police officer. Shot him in the head as he slept. Then she burned the house down. When the police and fire brigade turned up, she claimed that two dudes had turned up and masked, wearing balaclavas or something. They but they'd shot him and then raped her into the bargain. That didn't hold up for long. And she claimed that she'd suffered years of abuse from him, that he'd forced her to engage in all sorts of sexual acts with prostitutes. It really is. She was described by the Herald, the Scottish newspaper, June the 5th, 1999. Loving mother, took great care to wait until her policeman husband Ian was asleep. They coolly shot him through the head. Loving mother. She also admitted attempting to kill him, I think the previous November, by sabotaging his car. So, I mean, she shot this guy through the head as he slept. And her tale was that, here's the Herald article. Kim Galbraith told a radically different tale, one which presented her husband as a sadist who indulged in foul perversions by holding a knife outside her throat, who had a hangout on her head and made her perform oral sex on him. All this garbage. And there's no evidence of this because it was a complete pack of lies. So what did Scottish Women's Aid do? Well, they brought in a so-called expert to testify on her behalf that this is the sort of thing that women endure, and that they'll go through years of this without any sort of, I mean, it's absolutely, you know, women can take years of abuse, but this is way over the top. And as I say, there's absolutely no evidence of this, none of it at all. In fact, this guy had been married before, and his first wife testified at the trial. So anyway, this didn't fly with the trial, and she was given a life sentence. But she had a second bite of the cherry, using the chimera of mental illness. And if you think mental illness is real, you really need to familiarise yourself with the work of Thomas Sars or Peter Breggin. It's a cop-out, basically. Certainly for, you know, no so-called mental illness excuses this sort of thing. Anyway, she had a retrial at the High Court in Glasgow, and by the legal fiction of diminished responsibility, murder conviction was replaced with one of culpable homicide, and a 10-year sentence was substituted. That was in May 2002. Lady Smith, who was, I presume that's not, I presume that isn't Dame Janet Smith, who was a no, it wouldn't have been Dame Janet Smith. It was Lady Smith, Scottish courts. The Scottish system is different. She said, your plea of culpable homicide has been accepted on the basis that you are of an abnormal mental condition and preoccupied that you were being sexually abused by your husband, of which there is no objective evidence. So this, I mean, some of these organisations will go to extraordinary lengths to absolve women of their crimes. Which brings us to Justice for Women, stroke the Centre for Women's Justice, a misnamed organisation if ever there was one. According to the blurb on its website, the Centre for Women's Justice was founded in 2016. We aim to bring together specialist lawyers, academics and other experts in the field of violence against women, with those working on the front line as activists, survivors and service providers, to bring strategic law challenges and ensure access to justice for victims of male violence. And on the Justice for Women website, it says Justice for Women was established in 1990 as a feminist campaigning organisation that supports and advocates on behalf of women who have fought back against or killed violent men. We strive to eradicate the discrimination in the legal system against women who have suffered male violence. Take a look at the statistics for incarceration and ask yourself, who is the victim of discrimination? This is actually one organisation. It was founded by Julie Bindel and her lesbian lover Harriet Wistrich. These are two man-haters. Bindel is a so-called journalist. Harriet Wistrich is, without question, the most corrupt lawyer in Britain. Their star catch was, still their star catch in fact, was Emma Humphreys. Emma Humphreys was a teenage prostitute who murdered her lover, Trevor Armitage, stabbing him through the heart. You'll find a lot of detail and analysis in my article, The Canonisation of Emma Humphreys. Humphreys is also on the timeline. She was 17 at the time. No doubt this was a tragic story. She was 17 at the time. She was living with a dude named Trevor Armitage, who was, I think, 32. He had a son about her age. All sorts of rubbish has been written about Armitage, but the fact is that Humphreys trashed his house. She then assaulted a hotel manager and a police officer. She was remanded in custody. When she was released, she was discharged into his care, and then she stabbed him through the heart as he lay on his back in a drunken stupor. These two hags got her out of prison on a, well, it's absolutely ludicrous. Perhaps even more outrageous than Humphreys was the Sally Challen case. Challen was a suburban housewife who, she was the mother of two sons. She and her husband Richard split up. They were either divorced or close to divorce. Certainly if they were divorced, she was trying to get back with him. I'm sorry about that. I can't do anything about the fire alarm, the smoke detector, whatever it is. The beeping, if it gets on your nose, believe it gets on mine all the time, all day. She put a hammer in her handbag, went to his home. She'd moved out of the matrimonial home and she was living in another house with her. So they had two sons, and she bashed him over the head, bashed his head in with a hammer. She went to Beachy Head to, well, Beachy Head is a well-known suicide spot. Whether or not she was actually going to commit suicide, or this is theatrical, who could say, but she was convicted, tried for murder, convicted, given a life sentence. She appealed. She had a few years knocked off her tariff. But years later, Wistrich and Bindel, they managed to spring him from jail. I made a video about this, about the most corrupt lawyer in Britain. You'll find it on BitChute. Oh, for Christ's sake. You'll find it on BitChute. It explains exactly how they did it. But basically, Wistrich has found a way of admitting new evidence, fabricated evidence, to appeals. On conviction, if you're convicted on indictment of any offence, you can't. Well, you can't appeal without leave, and you can't submit new evidence unless it's evidence which was generally not available at the time. There was a good reason for it not being submitted at the time, and it also must also be evidence that's capable of being believed or worthy of belief. The rationale behind that is that given enough time and resources, in the Bill Cosby case, evidence can be adduced to show an innocent man guilty. And the case of Rodney Reed, given enough time and resources, evidence can be adduced to show a guilty man innocent. Please check out both my video about my main video about Bill Cosby, the prior bad acts of Gloria Allred, and also Rodney Reed, murderer and serial rapist. It explains there how they do this. It's absolutely disgusting that an organisation like the Innocence Project should engage in such chicanery to try to free a monster, but it's actually par for the course for the likes of Wistrich and Bindel. Most recently, they succeeded in getting Farieissia Martin out of jail. This is her case. She stabbed her lover through the heart and lied about it. It's strikingly similar to the case of Emma-Jayne Magson. There was no... she didn't accuse the man she murdered of sexual abuse, but they actually got her back to the Court of Appeal twice, if you can imagine that. Very few people get to the Court of Appeal twice. And her... well, she had a retrial, and on the second appeal, the court said no, there will be no third trial. I've had some correspondence with the mother of the victim, James Knight. She's a ordinary working class woman, Leicester. She was a mother of 6, and now she's got 4 because one of her other sons committed suicide. Maybe linked to the death of his brother. So it really is sad. Magson is a monster. Martin, Farieissia Martin. Well, this is again. This is on the full throat timeline. These women are Bindel and Wistrich are totally beyond the pale. I wrote to the Lord Chief Justice after Magson's second failed appeal. Second appeal, which failed. I never got an acknowledgement, but hopefully that some attention will be paid to it, because this is what's happening here is absolutely outrageous. Which brings us to Women Against Rape. There are a number of organisations called Women Against Rape, clones of, I believe Women Against Rape, the UK version is the original. If you check out their website, they claim, I can find this, here we are. It was founded in 1976. We have won changes in the law, such as making rape in marriage a crime. No, you never did such a thing. What happened was also in 1976. I don't know if it was related to the founding of this, but there was a horrible case. A bloke named Morgan convinced 3 of his drinking buddies to rape his wife. Said she enjoyed that sort of thing. They were convicted because at the time a man could not be found guilty of raping his wife. This the case went all the way up to the House of Lords. It was decided in 1991 that a man could indeed rape his wife. However, that's only part of the story. It's always been illegal for a man to subject his wife to gross violence of any kind. There's this case law on that going back to at least the 19th century. All it did was codify it that a man could be guilty of actually raping his wife. So don't believe that garbage. This organisation didn't really come to my attention until 2015. In January 2013, Eleanor de Freitas accused Alexander Economou of drugging and raping her on December 20th, 2012. He was arrested. The police, they didn't really do much in the way of investigation. He did his own investigation, being a man of some substance, and he found exculpatory CCTV footage, which, according to the likes of Lisa Longstaff, is exculpatory of nothing, because what you must remember is that for these women there is no such thing as exculpatory evidence. Whatever a woman does after an alleged rape is proof that she was raped. If she continues to have a relationship with her alleged rapist, if she showers him with praise, whatever she does, it doesn't matter. But thankfully the law doesn't think like that. Anyway, Ekonomu wasn't satisfied with the fact that they simply dropped the case. His investigation revealed that she had falsely accused another man before of either rape or attempted rape. She was a nutter, but she was also a prostitute. And that's the reason. Basically, he found out she was a prostitute and dumped her, and she's exacted revenge on him. He brought a private prosecution, and I think 3 days before the trial was due to start, she committed suicide. And this became, well, in 2015 there was a lot of publicity about it, and in I think it was May 2015, Lisa Longstaff went on the Victoria Derbyshire programme, and she said that Lisa Longstaff is a long time Women Against Rape worker, or whatever you want to call her, activist. And she said Freitas committed suicide because she was being prosecuted by her rapist. She said it twice. It wasn't a mistake. She said it because she thought she could get away with it. They lie gratuitously. Politicians of a certain hue do the same thing. Anyway, I saw that. I emailed Victoria Derbyshire. I also managed to get in touch with Alexander Ekonomu, and he had, I don't have a programme of Scrub, but from the BBC website, but they published a correction. And since then, I've looked into the activities of Women Against Rape, and basically, as I say, they never met a false accuser they didn't like, not one. And they have gone the extra parsec to validate false allegations of rape. And they, as with most of these organisations, they play all sorts of statistical games about false allegations, which are so incredibly rare. You can't believe how rare they are. On December 2nd, 2014, Women Against Rape held a meeting at the Palace of Westminster. You'll find this on the Full Soap timeline at December 2nd, 2014. It was held in Committee Room 10. And the lies are just unbelievable. There was that they had Gal Sherwood, who was how can I put it? She's on the timeline. She faked a series of attacks on herself. Absolutely ludicrous. I thought the most disgusting case they defended here, though, was that of Rhiannon and Brooker. Brooker, how can I put it? Some false rape allegations are spur of the moment or not really contrived. Brooker made a series of false allegations of not just of sexual assault, but of actual physical assault and inflicted injuries on herself. She leaked these lies to her circle over a period of months, and this resulted in the arrest of Paul Fenton. And when the police went to bolster what they considered to be an already strong case by looking for further forensics and stuff, to their surprise, if not absolute horror, they found that Brooker had fabricated. I mean, he had a rock solid alibi for one of these allegations, but she was faking all sorts of stuff. She didn't appear at this meeting, but a lawyer who acted for her did. And Lisa Avalos was here as well. She's an American so-called academic, and they don't want any false accuser to face prosecution ever. And as far as they will credit that any woman does falsely accuse a man of rape. So this was a whole, I'd say that the part of Westminster, clearly they're exerting pressure on MPs, which they've been doing for decades. And Bettina Arndt, the Australian activist, will tell you all about this. She's an amazing woman. And also Karen Strawn, the Canadian vlogger. And Diana Davison's done a lot on this as well. She's another Canadian. Basically, the law has been perverted very, very much in Canada, in Britain, in Australia, and in Spain, where these feminist activists have they've lied and lied and lied, and there's something called the Duluth model regarding domestic violence, which is basically an assumption the man is always the perpetrator, and that allegations made against men are always true. And there's a whole industry out there of false allegations. The anti-rape industry, so-called, the violence against women initiatives. It's all based on lies, contrived statistics, false narratives. And the state of legislation is due overwhelmingly to these women. A terrible state of legislation it is. So anyway, take a look at the false rape timeline if you haven't done so. This is video number 72. There's others as well, and don't believe anything you hear from the likes of Lisa Longstaff, Lisa Avalos, Sandy Brinley, any of these lying hags, because they can't be trusted. So please share this if you can. There's a donation link. Anyone who wants to donate, not necessarily cash, but if you have any cases you want to send me, people send me cases from time to time. In fact, I've been sent documentation as well by men who've been falsely accused of rape, and by other people. Contact with lawyers, limited contact with police officers. So people are waking up a bit, but there's a long way to go. And of course, we don't want to dissuade women who've generally been raped, but as I've said before many times, and the evidence bears this out, real victims have bruises, not credibility issues.